This trade idea could actually be fantastic for the Boston Red Sox. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin, and in today's video, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at the latest name to be added to this MLB trade market and why they make a ton of sense for Boston. We're going to be talking about what it could possibly take to get this guy, and of course, whether or not this is something that could actually happen. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. So a new name has officially been added to the board. Who is that name? Well, Jeff Passan, in an article yesterday where he essentially broke down where everything stands with Major League free agency / trade rumors over the last couple of days, put this out there. He said that the Minnesota Twins have started listening to offers on their starter Pablo Lopez. Now for the Red Sox, that should immediately make their ears tingle because Pablo Lopez could be exactly what the Red Sox are looking for. In fact, Pablo Lopez could be exactly what the Red Sox are missing. Pablo, over his career, has a 3.91 ERA with a lower 3.65 FIP, so a little bit of unluckiness with that ERA number. The WHIP is at 1.181, and the ERA plus is at 108, which is 8% above league average production. Now, this certainly isn't certified bona fide ACE statistics by any means, but it is absolutely a middle-of-the-rotation arm sort of floor here for Pablo Lopez. And what I mean by floor is we kind of saw what Pablo Lopez's current floor possibly looks like because this season was a bit of a down year for him. He had a 4.08 ERA this year, again with a FIP lower, actually significantly lower than his ERA at 3.65. So again, you got to talk about the fact that he was probably pitching a bit better than his ERA leads on despite having a bit of a down year, but he was still an above average pitcher with an ERA plus at 102. And that sort of feels like that may be Lopez's floor. At worst, he's a slightly above league average arm, but the ceiling is what should get Red Sox fans really excited because who Pablo Lopez could potentially be on the mound if he was available for trades and if the Red Sox were interested, it's really great. In just 2 years ago, in 2023, Lopez had a 3.66 ERA, a 3.33 FIP. He was striking out almost 11 batters per 9 innings at 10.9, walking just 2.2, which, by the way, is something Pablo Lopez does really well. He's very good at commanding a strike zone. Historically, he does not walk a whole lot of players, and his ERA plus in 2023 was 1.19. Again, 19%, basically 20% better than the average pitcher in Major League Baseball. He was an all-star and a top 10 Cy Young candidate during the 2023 season, and just look at who this guy could be. Take a look at this Baseball Savant page. It is almost as red as you could possibly get. This was back again in 2023, and if this is the dude that you could potentially get here, you're talking about a guy who could very well be a really, really solid number 2 in a rotation, but it's not just the fact that his ceiling could be as a top-line, front-line starter, it's also that regardless of what you get from him, whether it be that sort of mid-rotation type arm or whether it be that sort of top-rotation type arm, is that he's going to give you a ton of innings regardless. Through his last 3 seasons in Major League Baseball, Pablo Lopez is averaging 186 innings pitched per season and almost 6 innings pitched per start. That is, in my opinion, an incredibly important factor here as to why he makes sense for the Red Sox, because bringing in somebody who at the bare minimum is going to give you a ton of innings is going to do 2 very important things for the Red Sox. The first and foremost is that it's going to give your bullpen some relief. That was a big problem with the Red Sox last year. You had a lot of really talented starting pitchers, but they were also guys who just simply did not go incredibly deep into games. This caused the bullpen to have to get through innings 6 through 9 on a regular basis. Having a guy like Pablo Lopez limits that a little bit, and it does wonders for a bullpen. The second thing it does is it takes some pressure off of guys like Crochet, guys like Giolito in having to get 170, 180, 200 innings, whatever it may be this season, right? Those guys are both coming off of pretty major injuries. Now, Garrett Crochet should be off the leash. Andrew Bailey said, look, if he's healthy, if he's available, we're going to let him pitch as long as he's willing to pitch. Giolito, a little bit of a different story, right? That guy's probably going to be capped on the amount of innings that you're allowed to use him for. So it not only relieves your bullpen, it also relieves some of your rotation as well. On top of all that, This is also a guy who's not exactly a short-term solution. This is a dude who could be impacting this rotation for a few different years. Right now, Pablo Lopez is currently under a contract he signed in terms of an extension with the Minnesota Twins. What this means for the Red Sox, if they were to go and get this guy, is that they'd have him under control for the next 3 seasons. During that time, he's going to be making $21.75 million a year, which is unbelievably affordable if you consider what starting pitchers are currently getting on this market. Even comparing him to some of the other potential trade targets the Red Sox are looking at, he is a cheaper option than Luis Castillo. And the big thing, in my opinion, would be the age range that you'd be getting Pablo Lopez in. During this contract, Pablo Lopez is going to be pitching for you in his age 29 through 31 seasons. We know that the Red Sox have been hesitant or are hesitant to give out money to older pitchers, especially long-term deals to older pitchers. This is sort of right in their wheelhouse. This is a shorter term deal, but still gives you a bit of control over this guy. This is a cost control deal, and it's not a deal that you are going to be getting a pitcher into their mid-30s. And in fact, you're going to be getting a couple of years of what most people consider to be the prime of a starting pitcher's career. That's an absolutely fantastic combination when it comes to appeal for the Boston Red Sox. So if you're the Red Sox and the Twins have started opening their ears a little bit to the possibility of trading Pablo Lopez, I think you got to Kool-Aid man this thing, right? You got to bust down that door in order to try and get him. But the bigger question then becomes, what would it take to get Pablo Lopez? And is this something that is grounded in reality? Could it actually happen? I gotta be honest with you. I don't think that this is going to be an easy trade for the Red Sox to pull off. If you're looking at this from a Minnesota Twins perspective, Pablo Lopez is younger, he has a decent deal attached to him, and he is a productive pitcher, which all makes him really valuable on the open market. But outside of those factors, pitching is an absolute premium this offseason. You're going to have to overpay any pitcher you want to bring in on the free agent market. Teams are really, really high when it comes to trading their starting pitchers. The Twins are probably in a very similar boat. And on top of that, the Twins play in a pretty crappy division, right? It's not an incredibly competitive division. The Twins aren't that far from being a legitimate competitive team in this division, which means they aren't incredibly motivated to sell Pablo Lopez. In order to get him, in my opinion, the Red Sox are going to have to part with some major league talent. I don't think it makes a ton of sense for the Twins to come into this situation looking for some high caliber prospects that could possibly impact the team in 26, 27, or 28. They're going to be looking for guys who are going to be able to impact this team in 2025. However, the good news here is that the Red Sox do have some options for that possibility that could be a little bit enticing for the Minnesota Twins. The first possibility here is that the Red Sox center a trade around Cutter Crawford. Cutter is a year older than Pablo Lopez, but he does have more control than Pablo, making him a little bit more appealing in my opinion if you're the Twins, right? Plus, the Twins have a bit of a pitching factory over there. They've really done a good job at developing solid starting pitching. If they believe Cutter Crawford could be somebody that they think they can turn into a mid-rotation type arm, with the cost control being lower than Pablo Lopez, with the idea that you are going to be getting an extra year that you wouldn't have if you kept Pablo Lopez, maybe that's something they're interested in, especially if they're comfortable with Bailey Ober and Joe Ryan starting to become sort of their 1-2 punch at the top of that rotation. On top of that, you add in a guy like David Hamilton to this sort of idea, and he becomes a league average bat with solid defense at second base, and he's an incredibly quick person. That could be something that is a little bit appealing to the Minnesota Twins. The other option here for the Red Sox to potentially at least open the door to trade talks with Pablo Lopez is to center it around a guy like Wilyer Abreu. Now, the Minnesota Twins were actually pretty solid offensively last year. In most categories, they were a top half team in baseball, with their overall team OPS just outside of the top 10. But if they want to truly compete in their division, if they want to try and win and get back into the playoffs, a guy like Wilyer Abreu could really help with that. One, he's probably a dude who could propel you into that top 10 in terms of OPS. Two, he's going to give you solid defense in the outfield, which is something that I think would be appealing for the Minnesota Twins. And three, he adds some home run potential, which is something the Minnesota Twins don't have a ton of right now. Taking a look at last season, their max amount of home runs was in the low 20s. 20s. Wilyer Abreu had, 15 home runs in his rookie campaign. This is a guy who, at his peak, could give you 25 home runs and be another bat that gives you a whole lot of power. And I think that should be something that is appealing for the Minnesota Twins. Now, who you add on to Wilyer is a bit of an interesting conversation because the value 1-for-1 doesn't simply match up. You could hypothetically once again go with a guy like David Hamilton, who again is a major league ready bench type player. Maybe you try him out as a starter at second base. You probably don't want him at shortstop, but there is some pluses to David Hamilton at second base. You could also attach a couple of other, maybe lesser names a little bit than David Hamilton. And I don't think it's really lesser. That's a kind of a bad word for it, but other category type names. Maybe a guy like Quinn Priester is someone that the Twins are extremely interested in. That's a dude who does have a high ceiling, who could potentially end up being a back end of the rotation arm for the Twins, while also giving them the ceiling that he continues to improve with a whole lot of control as well. Maybe you add in him, maybe you add in a Grissom or a Refsnyder or whoever to really sort of get this deal going. But I think those are your two options in terms of who could center a trade to get Pablo Lopez to this Red Sox team. Now, the question becomes, is this something that's grounded in reality? Could the Red Sox actually get something like this done? And in my opinion, it all comes down to how highly Minnesota Twins value Pablo Lopez. On paper, these trades are pretty even, right? The Twins are getting something solid. The Red Sox are getting something solid. But again, you go back to what does the market currently look like for starting pitchers, and it's astronomical. Teams are paying an extreme premium to get themselves some even mid to top mid rotation arms, not to mention an ace caliber arm. What are the Twins actually looking for? Are they holding him to higher esteem than he may actually be worth? If that's the case, I don't know how much more the Red Sox will be willing to add to a package to bring Pablo Lopez in. I don't know how much further they're going to go. I don't think a name like Marcelo Meyer or even a Miguel Blaze makes a ton of sense to give up in this trade package. I don't think a Franklin Arias makes a ton of sense to give up in this trade package, right? But that might be where the Twins are at because the Twins don't necessarily have to trade this guy. They could hold on to Pablo Lopez and say, look, we're just going to try and compete with the team that we have in 2025. And honestly, they probably could do exactly that. So that's the tricky part in this trade conversation, whether or not the Twins are willing to come down a little bit on what their price actually is. And honestly, I don't know what the answer to that is going to be. I feel like the Twins could be very reasonable. I feel like the Twins would be very reasonable, but they also don't have to be very reasonable. And I don't know that the Red Sox come up to match that deal. So ultimately, when we're looking at this trade possibility, the reason I'm calling this a fantastic trade proposal is because I truly do think Pablo Lopez would be a fantastic addition to the Boston Red Sox. In my opinion, I think, especially if the Twins are starting to listen to him, he's towards the top of my wish list right now. I think it goes legitimately Corbin Burnes and then Pablo Lopez. I think he's a better arm than Luis Castillo. At the bare minimum, he's younger. He gives you the same amount of innings, and I think could be more successful in Boston. I think he's been more consistently proven than Walker Buehler and Jack Flaherty. He definitely has a higher ceiling than Nick Pivetta or Sean Manaea. So you sit there, and I think there's a lot of legitimate reasons why Pablo Lopez makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox. It ultimately, again, is going to come down to what the Twins are expecting in this trade package, and I think ultimately that's what we're going to be talking about the rest of this offseason. Whoever the Red Sox do end up trading for, all of it is going to boil down to how highly do these teams value these guys. So I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, but if the Red Sox can get a deal done with Pablo Lopez, I think they're going to be in a very good spot. But that's just my opinion. So let me know in the comment section down below. Is this trade proposal a fantastic idea? Am I wrong? Am I overlooking something that you guys think is a very important factor here? What are your thoughts on the idea of Pablo Lopez to the Red Sox, and what would you give up to get him? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It helps these videos out a ton. It's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you guys do want to listen instead of watch these episodes, the best way to do that is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.